Welcome to the Global Migration Centre, where we bring to you highlights of our conference dedicated to the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. The conference was supported by the Ville de Genève, the Swiss National Science Foundation and the DCP at the Graduate Institute.
We are here on the 10th anniversary of the Global Centre here, the Migration Centre, and my heartiest congratulations to Vincent.
I hope that the initial ideas that I would like to share are going to be enriching the discussion throughout the day today.
We have benefited very much from all the presentations this morning.
It's really a great opportunity to share with you my thoughts on this topic.
It's well known that the Global Compact for Migration is the first intergovernmentally negotiated agreement which, in a holistic and comprehensive manner, embraces for the first time all dimensions of international migration.
There needs to be a more comprehensive approach to migrant vulnerability, but also a more rigorous process in place to identify and assess vulnerability.
Probably the global compact stays quite far away from questions of nationality. It's a very sensitive issue, but I think it's an issue to be at least put on the table.
This is not easy. This is a delicate balance, but one necessary to adequately address the protection needs of vulnerable migrants. Thank you.
I take the opportunity of this conference to thank warmly all the persons who worked and have worked within the GMC to make it a unique research center. And to come back to this conference in particular, this conference has been possible thanks to the financial support of the City of Geneva, the Swiss National Science Foundation, and the executive programs in development policies and practices. So I'm very grateful to the funders also because they, not only for the support to the organization of the conference, but also because they allow us to work in a truly independent way without any interference. And it is more important than ever to promote an independent expertise and an independent evidence-based approach to migration. And this is clearly also the general ambition of the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration, which has been adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 2018. And its adoption took place in a rather inauspicious and divisive atmosphere. And its adoption with a broad majority, 152 UN member states, its adoption with a broad majority of states was a tour de force given the politically toxic context surrounding migration, the opposition of the Trump administration, but also given the virulent campaign orchestrated by the extreme right in many countries against the Global Compact. So this adoption is an important landmark, also because the Compact is the only intergovernmental instrument adopted at the universal level to address migration in a comprehensive way beyond the traditional opposition between forced and voluntary migration, between refugees and migrant workers. And this is an important element. Of course, this instrument has its own limitations. It is not binding per se, even if international law has a role to play. And it is true that it is easy for lawyers to be condescending with soft law. This is not binding, this is not law. The reality is much more subtle than this. First of all, because soft law instruments do represent a reality of our time since decades in all fields of international law, first of all. And second, in the particular context of migration, in such a sensitive and polarized topic like migration, the alternative was not between a binding instrument and a non-binding instrument. The alternative was between a non-binding instrument and no instrument at all. So clearly, it is important to acknowledge the importance of this instrument, even if, of course, it has some drawbacks. International law is obviously part of the picture, but it is conceived as one particular ingredient among many others to achieve a broader political purpose. And basically, the Global Compact is, in essence, a political project to develop multilateralism, governance in the context of migration, and to express a collective commitment to improving cooperation on migration. Obviously, again, it has also some limitation in the sense that the GCM is primarily prospective in nature, so it must not be seen as a final product. It is a roadmap to frame the international agenda as such. Basically, the compact does acknowledge migration as a question of shared responsibilities which call for a global approach. And this is the main message here. And another interesting element, the compact has forged a common understanding among states about the challenges and opportunities of migration, and also has identified the way to go forward in addressing these challenges and opportunities. Obviously, 4 years after its adoption, the GCM does exemplify both the potential but also the limitation of soft law in promoting global migration governance. And soft law operates as a coordinating device to frame future actions of states alongside some common line of conduct. Soft law is fundamentally a vehicle of convergence and a factor of stabilization in a decentralized society. But I'm not here to proclaim the importance of soft law as such. I'm not here to do the apology of soft law. I mean, soft law has also its own drawback. The use of soft law remains highly ambiguous and also political by nature. Because I already explained in my book, for instance, that soft law remains a double-edged sword for international migration law, and it must be accordingly apprehended with caution. And the Global Compact is no exception. It can be used as an instrument for change or an attempt to save the status quo. So clearly, there is an ambiguity inherent to the use of soft law and also inherent to the GCM. But it is important for us lawyers to, first of all, acknowledge the political nature of this instrument, but also to see the potential for international law. To give you a general overview about the key functions of the Global Compact, and before the discussion, the more in-depth discussion we will have with a lot of major scholars working in this area, I would like to start with an important restatement about the political nature of the Compact. For lawyers, political is frequently something bad. Not necessarily, in the sense that in this case, the Global Compact for Migration, the political agenda, the political project of the GCM is fundamentally a counter-narrative to populism and unilateralism. The idea is to provide a new impetus for multilateralism as a counter-system to unilateral action in the field of migration. And generally speaking, the main contribution of the Compact is to sanction and crystallize the consensus of the international community on the most topical issues associated with migration. So the idea is to pave the way for a counter-narrative to the populist rhetoric through a balanced, consensual, and inclusive approach. I put here an extract of the Compact which well captures the narrative explaining that migration has been part of human experience through history, and we, the state, recognize it as a source of prosperity, acknowledging that also the majority of migrants are traveling in safe, orderly, irregular migration, contrary to the common obsession against irregular migrants. And this is this common vision is fundamentally aimed at dispelling. I put other examples which highlight that the idea is to provide objective evidence information with a view to dispelling misleading narratives that generate negative perceptions, because clearly this is one of the key issues at stake, the misleading narratives, bias, prejudice, and so on. And interestingly, the Compact, despite the political context prevailing around migration, the Compact does highlight the positive contribution of migrants at many occasions across the document, and alongside evidence data about their role in countries of origin and countries of destination. And this counter-narrative against to populism does explain to a large extent the reasons why some states, 5 states, rejected its adoption, and some continue to do so. To give an easy example, Hungary, last May, within the General Assembly, and I quote, Hungary reaffirmed its opposition, and I quote, Hungary does not agree with highlighting the positive element of migration and the importance of facilitating this dangerous and harmful phenomenon either. So these highlight, of course, by opposition, what is really the political project of the Compact. And the political function of the GCM is also, as a counter-narrative to xenophobia and populism, is also well exemplified by the changing position of the US. Trump administration withdrew from the negotiation of the Compact before the Biden administration announced that the US supports the vision of the GCM and seek to achieve many of its objectives, to quote the exact formulation. So clearly, the Global Compact has a role to play, first of all, to develop a counter-narrative, and while providing a counter-narrative to populism, the Global Compact is also, the second function is fundamentally a collaborative framework among states. The GCM primarily intends to facilitate orderly, safe, regular migration with, while reducing the risk and challenge of migration. And of course, this project of facilitating safe, orderly, and regular migration, this objective is obviously not free from ambiguity. And there are many ambiguities here. Typically, the objective of promoting regular pathway does coexist with the one of minimizing the adverse drivers generating migration. And to be clear, the Global Compact does not create any new rights or new obligations. It is also far from providing a comprehensive and coherent vision of international migration law. It was not the purpose of the GCM. The GCM shed light on some issues that are perceived by states as being the most relevant ones to achieve their objective of cooperation. So this is the very essence of the compact, and obviously, like many other intergovernmental instruments, the compact is a compromise between competing interests, following the ontological tension between state sovereignty and human rights as such. And as a product of interstate negotiation, the content is inevitably consensual and accordingly not groundbreaking. I mean, we should not expect from state to be creative in this area. The idea, this was not the purpose. The compact must be taken for what it is, and this is another extract here. It is fundamentally a non-legal binding cooperative framework. So from this angle, the compact is a facilitator of international cooperation. It is a catalyst of global migration governance. And its ambition is to generate consensus and confidence building among states around a list of non-divisive issues. And for this purpose, the compact does identify 23 objectives, and each of these objectives does contain a commitment followed by a range of action to be adopted. So this is a rather precise instrument when compared to other diplomatic declarations. And the 23 objectives you can find here, the 23 objectives in a very reduced way, because the document is almost 40 pages. And obviously there is no clear articulation between or priority order between the objective. The overall picture remains quite complex and piecemeal. Some objectives are legal, such as using detention as a last resort. Others are more political. Some are very technical regarding remittances, but others are more open-ended. So the overall vision is difficult to capture, and this is the reason why I developed elsewhere in an article the idea is that the compact looks like a kaleidoscope. It is made up of a complex mix of multifaceted elements that are constantly changing and create different patterns depending on the angle of the relevant issue and depending on the related objective. And like a kaleidoscope, the compact breaks the vision down into a multitude of different but interrelated components. And this also highlights the cross-cutting nature of migration as such, the composite nature of migration, which cannot be captured in one single sentence, as such. And the variety of all these objectives requires a comprehensive and integrated approach when it comes to implementation. And this is an important aspect here to highlight because contrary to many other software instruments, implementation is mainstream through several new mechanisms specifically established for this purpose. A capacity building mechanism to support UN member states in their implementation, a UN network on migration gathering UN agencies to promote UN system-wide support, and finally, a follow-up process to review the progress. And 4 years after its adoption, the question is clearly about the implementation. Is it a continuing work in progress or simply a return of realpolitik after an enthusiastic adoption, which was not really enthusiastic, by the way? What is important here is to highlight that there is a strong focus on implementation, and this is very important when you compare to other soft law instruments in other fields, but also in the field of migration. Okay, I put here some examples of some extracts mentioning how states commit to continue to fulfill the objective and commitment and so on. And interestingly, there is the establishment of this is an important. The establishment of a review mechanism represents an important innovation. Through the creation of the International Migration Review Forum. The very first one took place last May in New York, within the UN General Assembly. And the primary role of the International Migration Review Forum is to serve as an intergovernmental global platform to discuss and share progress and challenges on the implementation of all aspects of the compact. And last May, 92 states have presented their own contribution, their own action to undertaken to implement the GCM. And the result of these discussions informs the adoption by states of the progress declaration of the International Migration Review Forum. Interestingly, this adoption, the adoption of the progress declaration was done by consensus and not by vote. So it signals, this is an important signal of commitment to furthering multilateral cooperation. I must add that the price to pay for this adoption by consensus was, however, quite high, in the sense that when it comes to the content is does not break new ground and may even appear as a step backward when compared to the text of the compact itself. And Colin Rajab, who is the coordinator of the Civil Society Action Committee, called the adoption of this declaration as a bittersweet moment, because clearly there are some positive reference to systemic racism, wage theft, regularization, but overall the content is quite weak and disappointing when compared to the text of the Global Compact. And clearly the reason is political, in the sense that the poor achievement of the Progress Declaration also reflects the prevailing atmosphere after almost 3 years of pandemic. The compact has been followed by the COVID-19, which was just the antithesis of COVID-19. States did the contrary of what they were supposed to do to fight COVID-19, in the sense contrary to the right-based and collaborative approach. I mean, it was on the contrary a resurgence of unilateralism, discrimination, entry ban, and so on. And it's true that in time of crisis, border closure provides a typical avenue to reassure citizens and also provide ideal scapegoat for their own failure and negligence. So clearly, after these very strange 3 years of COVID-19, the very fact that states have reaffirmed the enduring relevance of the compact may be seen, may be viewed as an achievement of its own, in the sense that the compact is still there and we renewed our commitment. But, I mean, the political context should not be an excuse for inaction or, even worse, a tactic to mask migrant rights violations. So, despite its own drawback as an intergovernmental instrument, the compact has still a vital role to play in this area, and the Progress Declaration cannot change the commitment made in the Global Compact. So it is probably better for the years to come to maintain the focus on the principles and commitment of the GCM, while paving the way to, while paying due regard to the specific role and nature of soft law and of in migration governance. And perhaps one key, there are 3 key reminders for states and for all stakeholders to keep in mind in the future, in the implementation. First of all, a commitment is a commitment. A key characteristic of the GCM is to express 23 specific commitments of state. And a commitment remains a commitment even when it is not formally binding. States are supposed to comply with it even if it is not legally enforceable. And inversely, the violations of binding norms of binding commitments is rarely followed by a legal sanction in international law. So clearly, it is important also to remind the importance of a commitment as such, even if it is not legally enforceable. Unfortunately, in our life is guided by commitment, not by legal duties. And most of our actions as individuals are prompted by other considerations than legal duties. And another important element, the fact that an instrument has no binding force does not mean that it has no legal effect. I know that lawyers are used to confuse the two, and but basically, without to go too much into detail, there is an important legal effect of soft law, which is to raise an expectation of compliance unless the state concerned clearly express its intention not to follow it. So, I mean, this is well based on well-established practice, case law, and I can provide more references if needed, and as developed in my book. But in short, states are expected to do what they have agreed on and declared to do in a soft law instrument. If not, they have to explain why. So they are free to not implement, to not honor the commitment, but they have to say why. And here this is an important reminder. The expectation of compliance remain a key reminder for states to comply with their commitment in implementing the GCM. Another important reminder, the Global Compact is not a menu à la carte. The Compact must be applied as a whole, and the comprehensiveness of the GCM is inherent in its very rationale. I mean, the 3 160 vision degree in those comprehensive and approach which is endorsed in the compact and restated several times. I mean, it is all-encompassing approach represents the hallmark of the GCM, and in fact its main added value when compared to binding and non-binding instrument governing migration. And here, the last review of the General Assembly last May revealed the temptation of states to adopt a much more segmented and fragmented approach. Many states did not address all 23 objectives, and typically Western states focused on migration control objective, whereas others focus on human rights objective. Here, there is the policy of pick and choose does not only create a double standard, it also exacerbates the divide between countries of origin and countries of destination. So this is important to provide a truly comprehensive implementation. All the commitments must be taken into account. And the last remembered key element for a way forward principle implementation is human rights of migrants are not negotiable. Reminding states to honor their commitment under the GCM shall not be done at the expense of migrants' rights. The human rights of migrants are not negotiable because migrants' rights are human rights, and as such, they are legally binding under treaty law and customary law. So, and here one should acknowledge that GCM has acknowledged and reaffirmed several times the overarching obligation of state to respect, protect, and ensure due respect for the rights for all human rights of migrants without regard documentation. And this is an important element and acknowledgement as such. But because reaffirming the human rights of migrants is all but trivial given in the prevailing context. And too frequently, the rhetoric of soft law is also a mask of hard practice. So it is also crucial to make sure that the implementation of the compact does not erode existing obligations that are legally binding under international human rights law. And from this broader angle, soft law and hard law are not mutually exclusive. They may be mutually reinforcing provided that they are implemented in a cogent and integrated way with due regard to their specificities. The GCM can make a difference on the ground if and only if it works in tandem with legally binding instrument. If not, it may eventually become nothing else than a mere smokescreen for the patent violation of human rights. And this is important to remain vigilant towards the legally binding duties of states. So to conclude, the commitments endorsed in the Global Compact are both significant and ambitious. They have the potential to improve the lives of migrants, to channel intergovernmental cooperation, but the impact of the compact depends on whether states will honor their commitment. And clearly the crash test of the compact lies in the ability of states to move from rhetoric to action. If they fail to do so, the recent and unprecedented mobilization of international community will be remembered as yet another missed opportunity in the long and turbulent history of migration. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for watching. Keep informed on our activities by following us on social media or by signing up to our newsletter on www.graduateinstitute.ch/GMC.